Emily sat by the large bay window of her luxurious suburban home, staring out at the perfectly manicured lawn. The rain tapped softly against the glass, a rhythmic sound that mirrored the emptiness she felt inside. At 35, she had everything a woman could dream of: a beautiful house, a successful husband, and financial security. Yet, something was missing. Her husband, Michael, was always busy. At 40, he was the epitome of a workaholic, buried in spreadsheets and conference calls. He left early in the morning and returned late at night, often too tired to even share a meal with her. Their conversations had become superficial, revolving around bills, schedules, and the occasional family gathering. Emily missed the days when they would talk for hours, sharing dreams and laughter. Now, it felt like they were two strangers living under the same roof. Emily tried to fill her days with activities. She took yoga classes, joined a book club, and even started gardening, but none of it could fill the void that gnawed at her heart. She longed for passion, for connection, for something that would make her feel alive again. One evening, as she sat alone in the dimly lit dining room, picking at her dinner, she couldn't help but wonder if this was all life had to offer. She glanced at the family photos on the wall, smiling faces frozen in time. They looked happy, but the truth was, she hadn't felt that way in years. The sound of the front door opening snapped her out of her thoughts. Michael walked in, looking exhausted. "Hey," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. "Hey," Emily replied, forcing a smile. "Long day?" "Yeah, just the usual. Meetings, deadlines, you know how it is," he said, loosening his tie. Emily nodded, though she didn't really know. She hadn't been part of his world for a long time. "I'm going to take a shower and hit the sack," Michael said, already heading upstairs. "Okay," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible, as she cleared the table. She couldn't help but feel a pang of resentment. Was this what she had signed up for? A life of solitude, of unspoken words and unfulfilled desires? That night, as she lay in bed beside Michael, who was already fast asleep, Emily stared at the ceiling. The rain had stopped, and the room was eerily quiet. She felt like a ghost, drifting through a life that no longer belonged to her. The next morning, Emily woke up to an empty house. Michael had left early again, leaving a note on the kitchen counter: "Running late. Have a great day." She sighed, crumpling the note and tossing it into the trash. Another day, another routine. But little did she know, her life was about to change. The monotony of Emily's life was broken unexpectedly one sunny afternoon. She was in the kitchen, sipping her third cup of coffee, when the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, so the sound startled her. Setting her mug down, she walked to the door and opened it. Standing on the porch was Jake, Michael's younger brother. At 25, he was the complete opposite of Michael: athletic, charming, and full of life. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and he wore a casual t-shirt and jeans that hugged his toned frame. A wide grin spread across his face as he greeted her. "Hey, Emily, long time no see," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "Jake," Emily exclaimed, genuinely surprised. "What are you doing here? Michael didn't tell you?" "I'm staying here for a couple of weeks while I figure out my next move," he explained, stepping inside. Emily shook her head. "No, he didn't mention it. But it's great to see you. Come on in." As Jake walked into the house, Emily couldn't help but notice how his presence seemed to fill the space. He carried a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a backpack in the other. "Where's Michael?" Jake asked, looking around. "At work, as usual," Emily replied, trying to keep the bitterness out of her voice. Jake nodded, understanding. "Yeah, he's always been the workaholic type. Anyway, I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," Emily said quickly. "It'll be nice to have some company around here." Over the next few days, Jake's presence brought a new energy to the house. He was easy to talk to, and Emily found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone in years. They spent hours chatting in the living room, sharing stories and laughing over old memories. One evening, after dinner, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air was warm and fragrant with the scent of blooming flowers. "You know, Emily, you're not like I remember," Jake said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Oh, how so?" she asked. Curious. "You seem different, more confident, more, I don't know, alive," he said, his eyes meeting hers. Emily felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "I guess I've just been in a rut for a while. Having you here has been refreshing." Jake smiled, his gaze lingering on her. "I'm glad I could help." As the days went by, Emily found herself looking forward to Jake's company more and more. He had a way of making her feel seen, appreciated, and desired, something she hadn't felt in a long time. One afternoon, they decided to go for a walk in the nearby park. The sun was shining, and the air was filled with the sound of birds chirping. They walked side by side, their conversation flowing effortlessly. "You know, Emily," Jake said, his voice soft, "you deserve to be happy. You're an amazing woman, and you shouldn't settle for less than you deserve." Emily stopped walking and turned to look at him. His words struck a chord deep within her, and she felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you, Jake," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Jake reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Anytime, Emily." In that moment, something shifted between them. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, and Emily felt her heart race. She knew she was treading on dangerous ground, but she couldn't help the way she felt. That night, as she lay in bed, Emily couldn't stop thinking about Jake. His words, his touch, his presence, it all filled her with a sense of longing she hadn't felt in years. She knew she was playing with fire, but for the first time in a long time, she felt alive. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Emily. Jake's presence in the house had awakened something in her, a longing she had buried deep within herself. But with that longing came guilt, a nagging voice in the back of her mind reminding her of the vows she had taken with Michael. Michael, oblivious to the growing tension, continued his usual routine. He left early, came home late, and barely noticed the changes in Emily's demeanor. But Jake noticed. He saw the way she hesitated when they were alone, the way she avoided his gaze when their conversations turned too personal. One evening, after dinner, Emily found herself alone with Jake in the living room. Michael had gone to bed early, exhausted from another long day at work. The room was bathed in the soft glow of the fireplace, casting flickering shadows on the walls. "Emily," Jake began, his voice gentle but firm. "We need to talk." She looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. "About what?" "About this thing between us," he said, his eyes searching hers. Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to deny it, to brush it off as nothing. But she couldn't. The truth was, she felt it too, the undeniable connection, the magnetic pull that drew them together. "Jake, she started, but the words caught in her throat. "Emily, I know this is complicated. I know Michael's my brother, and I would never want to hurt him. But I can't ignore how I feel about you," he confessed, his voice filled with emotion. Emily's eyes welled up with tears. "Jake, I don't know what to do. I'm so confused." Jake reached out and took her hand in his. "Emily, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to feel loved and appreciated. If Michael can't give you that, then maybe." He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. Emily felt a surge of emotions, fear, guilt, but also a glimmer of hope. "Jake, this is so wrong," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Is it?" he asked, his gaze intense. "Or is it wrong to keep pretending that everything's fine when it's not?" Emily didn't have an answer. She felt torn between her loyalty to Michael and the undeniable connection she felt with Jake. The next few days were filled with tension. Emily and Jake avoided being alone together, but the unspoken words hung heavy in the air. Michael, still unaware of the growing rift, continued to be distant, his mind consumed by work. One night, after another silent dinner, Emily couldn't take it anymore. She needed to confront her feelings. To make a decision, she found Jake in the backyard, sitting on the porch steps, staring up at the stars. "Jake," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. He turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. Emily. She sat down beside him. Her heart racing. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not. Jake nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars. I know. I don't know what to do, she admitted, her voice breaking. Jake turned to her, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. Emily, you need to do what's best for you. If that means staying with Michael, then I'll respect that. But if it means choosing happiness, then I'll be here for you. Emily felt the tears spill over, her emotions overwhelming her. Jake, I'm so scared. He reached out and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. I know, but sometimes, you have to take a leap of faith. In that moment, Emily felt a sense of clarity. She knew that whatever decision she made, it would change everything, but she also knew that she couldn't keep living in the shadow of her own unhappiness. As they sat there, under the vast expanse of the night sky, Emily felt a sense of peace wash over her. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. The decision weighed heavily on Emily's heart. She knew that whatever choice she made, it would leave a permanent mark on her life and the lives of those around her. After days of sleepless nights and endless contemplation, she finally made up her mind. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the house, Emily sat Michael down in the living room. Her hands trembled as she clasped them together, her heart pounding in her chest. Michael, we need to talk, she began, her voice steady but laced with emotion. Michael looked up from his phone, his brow furrowed. What's wrong? Emily took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I can't keep living like this. I've tried to make it work, but I feel like we're just existing, not really living. I need more. Michael, I need to feel loved, appreciated, and I don't think you can give me that anymore. Michael's face went pale, his expression a mix of shock and disbelief. Emily, what are you saying? I'm saying I think we need to separate, she said, her voice breaking. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Michael stared at her, his eyes searching hers for any sign of hesitation. But Emily's resolve was firm. Is this about Jake? Michael asked, his voice tinged with anger. Emily shook her head. No, Michael, this is about us, about how we've grown apart. Jake's just a reminder of what I've been missing. Michael stood up abruptly, his fists clenched at his sides. So that's it? After all these years, you're just going to walk away? I'm not walking away, Michael, I'm choosing myself, Emily replied, her voice filled with a quiet strength. Michael turned away, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Emily said softly. I just needed you to know how I feel. The days that followed were filled with tension and heartache. Michael moved out of the house, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts. She felt a mix of relief and regret, her emotions a tangled mess. Jake, sensing her turmoil, tried to be there for her, but Emily kept him at arm's length. She needed time to process everything, to figure out what she truly wanted. One night, as she sat alone in the living room, the silence of the house pressing down on her, Emily felt a wave of regret wash over her. She missed Michael, the man he used to be, the life they had built together. But she also knew that she couldn't go back to the way things were. When Jake found her, tears streaming down her face, he sat down beside her and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. It's okay to feel this way, he said softly. It's okay to miss him. Emily leaned into him, her tears soaking his shirt. I just wish things could have been different. I know, Jake replied, his voice filled with empathy. But sometimes, you have to let go of what's hurting you to make room for something better. Emily nodded, her heart heavy but her mind clearer. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but she also knew that she had made the right choice. As the days turned into weeks, Emily began to rebuild her life. She focused on herself, rediscovering the passions she had set aside for so long. And though the pain of her separation from Michael lingered, she felt a sense of hope for the future. One evening, as she stood on the porch, watching the sunset, Emily felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew that her decision had come with a cost. But she also knew that she had chosen herself, and that was something she would never regret. The months that followed were a journey of self-discovery for Emily. The separation from Michael had left her feeling raw and vulnerable. But it had also given her the space to breathe, to think, and to rediscover who she was outside of her marriage. She started small, reconnecting with old friends, picking up hobbies she had abandoned, and even taking a solo trip to the coast. The ocean, with its vastness and unpredictability, mirrored her own emotions. She would sit on the beach for hours, letting the waves wash over her feet, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. Jake was there for her, but he gave her the space she needed. He didn't push, didn't demand answers, and for that, Emily was grateful. He was a constant presence, a reminder that she wasn't alone. But he also respected her need to figure things out on her own. One evening, as they sat on the porch sharing a bottle of wine, Jake finally broke the silence. "How are you feeling, Emily?" he asked, his voice gentle. Emily sighed, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I feel lighter, like I've been carrying this weight for so long. And now it's finally gone." Jake nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And what about Michael? Do you miss him?" Emily hesitated, her heart aching at the mention of his name. "I miss the man he used to be. The man I fell in love with. But I don't miss the person he became. I don't miss the loneliness, the silence, the feeling of being invisible." Jake reached out and took her hand in his. "You deserve to be seen, Emily. You deserve to be loved the way you want to be loved." Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "Jake, I'm scared. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I hurt you? Or Michael? Or myself?" Jake squeezed her hand, his gaze steady. "Emily, there's no right or wrong choice. There's only what feels true to you. And whatever you decide, I'll respect it." Emily felt a surge of emotion, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Jake, for being patient, for being here for me." Jake smiled, his eyes soft. "Always." As the weeks turned into months, Emily began to feel a sense of clarity. She realized that her separation from Michael wasn't just about him, it was about her. It was about reclaiming her identity, her happiness, her sense of self-worth. One day, as she stood in front of the mirror, she looked at herself, really looked at herself, and saw a woman who had been through hell and come out stronger on the other side. She saw a woman who had the courage to make difficult choices, to prioritize her own happiness, and to take control of her life. That evening, she called Jake and asked him to meet her at the beach. When he arrived, she was standing by the water, the wind tousling her hair, the sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. "Jake," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've made my choice." Jake's heart skipped a beat, his breath catching in his throat. "And?" Emily turned to him, her eyes shining with tears but also with a newfound strength. "I choose myself. I choose to be happy, to live my life on my own terms. And if that means being with you, then I'm ready." Jake felt a wave of relief and joy wash over him. He stepped forward, pulling her into his arms, and whispered, "I've been waiting for this moment. Emily, I've been waiting for you." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the waves crashing at their feet, Emily felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that she had made the right choice, for herself, for her happiness, and for her future.